Hi, Kalyani.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's really a privilege to be able to get to talk with you. So thanks for taking the time.
Well, it's wonderful to talk with you, old friend, Dambara.
I will just say that one thing that typifies you in my memory is just your gorgeous, high, trilling soprano voice that we get to hear on so many early recordings. And so I just want to know a little bit about how did you start? Where were you raised? What was your family like? Was music a part of it?
Oh, yes, music was very much a part of my early life, even because my mother had trained to be a concert pianist, and we had a big piano and a big organ in our house.
Ah,
She played both of those magnificently. She could play the organ with two hands on different scales and 2 feet pumping away.
did you learn to play the organ?
Well, I only did a transfer of being able to play the piano very averagely.
Okay.
And then I would transfer that knowledge to the harmonium, which is organ like.
Mhm.
That's all.
Where did you learn to sing?
Honestly, the voice came with me when
Yeah.
I came in. I didn't have any formal training to make it
Wow.
different. And I have to let you know, I don't have that voice anymore. Maybe 3 years ago, I don't know exactly when,
Hmm.
I realized my voice was no longer beautiful. And it was okay because I'd had a lifetime with it, singing mostly for God and loving the fact that I had that upliftment, the opportunity to put sound out of the being out into the air that was intended for God's ear.
Hmm.
That uplifted me. I sang in the choir at church all through high school. Loved that.
Tell us about how you ended up coming to Ananda.
Well, I went to Berkeley for 6 years. I got my master's and teaching credential. And the very last day of testing, that I was done with all my tests. I was walking home from the last test, tired as could be, and I ran into an old music friend from college. And she said, "You look terrible." I said, "Well, I just finished my last test and I have a 3-year old child and I am tired." And she said, "Listen, I know what you need. I'm going to take you somewhere this weekend. Now you get a babysitter." And that was easy because his father could take care of him. "And I'm taking you. There's no getting out of this." So we drove up to Ananda on Friday night. Satya greeted us,
Hmm.
and we stayed through Sunday lunch. And that was it. I met Swami. Personally, I talked to him in between the fire ceremony and the Sunday service.
Okay.
The fire ceremony was special. On the Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, um, I watched his lips. It was as if there was a magnet in my brain that made me watch his lips so that I could memorize what he was saying in this foreign language, Sanskrit. And I learned how to sing it while he was doing that and joined in as long as he was chanting it. And it was just fascinating. So in between that fire ceremony and the service he was giving a few minutes later, I ran along and asked him a question, and then I ran back and got into the Sunday service outside under the oak tree. And he gave his service, and afterwards everybody got in a long line to go up and greet him if they were new and so on. And when I came up to meet him, it was just the most profound thing in my life.
Hmm.
And I knew Ananda was my home. I knew I wanted to move there. It so profoundly affected me, his talk, that that was it for me. So I've been on the path since that weekend, August 31st, 1970, the last day of Spiritual Renewal Week that year, for 50 years now.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear any memories that come to mind about Swami.
Well, over that winter, I had already signed a contract the day before I came, or the day I came, Friday, to teach a year in Modesto. So I went off to teach that year, but I would come up every 2 weeks to visit. And on my very first visit, I was invited to Swami's dome just to have a chat. And he asked me questions about myself and sang a song. After hearing my answers, I told him that I had always been curious about everything, but I wanted to know more than what it was. I wanted to know why it was.
Mm.
Why do people do it that way? Or why are people doing anything? And so he sang silently. He just picked up his guitar and sang the song Why,
Hmm.
the whole song to me. And that was very cementing because I already had committed myself to be there. But now I knew there was music and meant so much to me. And it was beautiful music that it matched me perfectly. It
Mm.
was music that inspired, but it also had meaning.
Hmm.
And the words were important.
Yep.
You had to say them so they could be understood because it was a combination of touching your soul and your mind and heart. And that just really meant a lot. I knew I had found my music.
Mm. So, what are some other memories that you have?
Well, shortly after I moved to Ananda in June of 1971, right after school got out, um, he started the Gandharvas. And he said, if anybody would like to be part of a choral group, let me know. And I did. So we just started. It was very rough beginnings, but he already had written quite a few songs. So he had something for us to work on. And the majority of his, angelic music came years later, um, such as after his tour of the Holy Land, he
Hmm.
came back with so much beautiful music and so on. He's written over 400 pieces, I've heard.
Hmm.
I don't know how many exactly, but he he's written so much there. It's a lifetime's worth of study, isn't it? You also know.
Hmm.
Here's something Swami said early on. He said to me, very few words, but it changed me. He said, you need to smile with your eyes as well as your mouth.
Hmm.
Now, my job when I first arrived at Ananda was he put me in the position of being the receptionist at the farm.
Hmm.
And that gave relief to all these workers who had little tiny businesses or worked in the gardens. They didn't have to deal with visitors because by then there were so many visitors coming. And there was a reception center, and Swami plunked me in that. So I was constantly taking people around tours of Ananda. But he told me you need to smile with your eyes as well as your mouth.
Hmm.
And that did a wonderful thing for me.
Hey, you describing the early village reminds me, you were in a chicken coop, weren't you?
Well, my first house was a goat shed
Okay.
on Master's Market lawn. And I lived in that for 3 months till the chicken coop was available. And it was behind Master's Market off to the side. It's still
Okay.
there. It's been very, very useful for a lot of things. And at first, when I moved in, they moved out and the same day I moved in.
The chickens, you mean?
No, the people they had put up some walls in the chicken coop. And they also had put on a greenhouse addition to the coop,
Uh-huh.
which became a kitchen.
Okay.
It didn't have a sink or anything, but I dressed it out with a sink and different things. It was very, very tiny, just a little bedroom, which was my son's, and I slept in the living room
Hmm.
and meditation room and everything room. I lived there 10 years,
Wow.
71 to 81. Actually, I lived there longer because Nitai, we married in 81, but he couldn't stand up tall. He was tall, and he'd have to bow his head in that living room. So right away, he decided we were going to at least raise the roof up. That's what he wanted to do at first. But as he was removing roof, he saw the walls were rotten. He had to tear the walls down. And so we had to just get Mark Dial to do design for us, and we had a half a house. We built half a house. And at least we could stand up in it. And Prem had a bedroom upstairs, and it worked better for us. We lived in that half house for 2 years. And then when Mirabai came, we built the other half of the house.
Okay.
And that completed it. Full kitchen, full bathroom. It was nice.
Right.
And I remember we both experienced this and agreed. Mirabai was not going to be born until that house was finished, because I went into labor 2 weeks early and she wouldn't come, and they were still building.
Huh.
And so I said the day before she was born, I said, Nita, I really don't think she will like all the paint buckets and all the building things on the front porch. I don't think she's going to come until it's really cleaned up. So everything was ready inside. Now the porch, and Haridas came and some other people came and helped at night to clear that porch. Okay, they finished around 11 at night. She was born the next morning around 6.
Huh, what do you know? Share other memories that you have of being with Swami.
He named my daughter Mirabai in a very interesting way. You want to hear that?
Yeah.
When the baby was coming, somebody called Swami and said, Kalyani's in labor. Could you pray for her? So that was one phone call. Then the baby was born, and somebody called, or maybe we called. I know we have a picture of us talking to Swami on the phone. Maybe we called and said, Swami, it's a girl. And can we name it X? And he said, oh, no, that's much too harsh for her. He hasn't met her. He's in Italy. So then we called him 3 times about names that we talked about.
Uh-huh.
All spiritual names from India. No. The 3rd time he said, listen, when I get home, I will give her name. So he wasn't going to be home for 2 weeks.
Huh.
We had a baby that we couldn't talk about by name for 2 weeks. And then I took pictures of his meeting her. Boy, did they lock eyes. This 2-week-old baby and Swami. Mirabai was driving into his eyes, just looking intently. And he was trying to decide between 2 names that he had felt were good for her. One was just Mira, and one was Mirabai. And he said, after looking at her, he said, her name should be Mirabai.
Many people know, or at least I hope they know her from the scene in Finding Happiness, where she does the gorgeous, they do a ballet sequence, which I think is maybe my favorite moment in the movie, or one of them certainly.
It's profound, I must say. You know, Asha was there watching for it. They had several takes. Mm-hmm. And she told me later that Mirabai danced not only beautifully, but it was always the same. She was a professional, giving the camera what it needed. Mm. She didn't tire out and say, oh, again, or anything like that. She just was in perfect poise each time.
Yeah. Tell me more about what your experience was with the Gandharvas. Did you sing only at the village or go out touring or what?
Well, we started at the village and sang for Sunday service for a long time, and they were lighthearted, but that's because they were devotees. You know, they wanted to enjoy life and share with others. So the Gandharvas were a perfect medium for Swami's message to the world. he always put into his music his message, what he wanted to share with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because his consciousness was broad, bright, and beautiful and Godward. That's how his music came out. Even the funny songs. In 1978, I think he took us on 2 America round tours. But we got into borrowed motorhome, big motorhome, and one large van. The 2 vehicles tootled around America to many different cities. And I actually helped to organize that first one. Lots of phone calls to different churches and places that would receive us for us to sing and Swami to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very nice, very exciting. It was an education for most of us, going around, an education in how to get along inside a small space. Through the music, people become more open to what he has to say. So he would have the Gandharvas sing pretty early on. Maybe he'd talk a little bit and then introduce us, but it would open people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
They would relax, stop judging, just listen with big ears and get something out of it that they might not have gotten without the music.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time this was not a typical, this wasn't a tour where he was a speaker. Here he was just a singer, but he brought his guitar and we came to the auditorium, and the big crowd was there, but they were very restless. Whatever had gone on just before Swami's turn just riled everybody up. I don't know what happened. So he sent me out there to calm them down so that he didn't have to deal with it when his turn came. He sent me, I wasn't expecting to sing. He said, go sing June in Ayodhya.
Huh.
And I did. So I came out on the stage. There was nothing on the stage but me in my chair and my guitar. And the crowd was kind of pulsating and, I suppose we're supposed to be quiet now, And they finally did. They calmed down. The song was long enough that it could change their vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were receptive to Swami. The second tour, I got to take my son Prem,
Uh-huh.
and he sang in the Gandharvas also. He has a good voice. Yeah.
I hadn't realized he went on that. That's great.
Yeah, he's been singing all his life.
Yeah.
There's a lovely photo, a couple of photos people took on his birthday on the trip. And he had the biggest smile and a cake in front of him with, that Maitri probably made. And it was just nice. I think he was given many unique experiences as a child.
How would you describe Ananda music to other people?
Well, to get the most out of Ananda music when you get to hear it, we should have a quieted mind and an open heart. And I would add that it would be best if you were a truth seeker, because when you are seeking more out of life than the pedestrian, what's right in front of everybody, you're wanting answers, you're wanting truth. This music, whether it's instrumental or with words, gives you that. And if you listen with a quiet mind and your heart is listening, you will get help and answers.
So what has Ananda music meant to you?
Well, without it, my life would have been so drab. Really, I honestly think it was always flowing through. I mean, Ananda is so joyful because of the music, I think. People practice for it and get ready for it and play. And there's always programs to go on that, except right now during COVID, but there's always things to do to share the music for people because it always helps people. And it helps us to sing it.
If somebody was coming to Ananda, or somebody was had the opportunity to hear this music or sing it for the first time, what advice would you have for them?
At this stage, when Swami's not here with us, I would want them to talk to somebody who has dedicated themselves to the music and who understands it inside. And that would be like Jeannie
Hmm.
or David, who's up in Portland, I think.
Hmm.
Someone like that who both is musical in their own right, but understands Swami's music.
Hmm.
So just to connect with the right people in order to have them suggest good songs for them to work on or put them in the right section of the group to sing and to help them develop. Because if they're interested in music, they need someone to guide them and listen to them and make suggestions. And that would be fantastic to have
Hmm.
guidance from people. And if you were in a choir, I would suggest you. So you're definitely in that category. So
Well, thank you, Kalyani. It's been delightful hearing all these things.
thank you so much.
Okay.
That's wonderful
Bye.
to do.
Mwah.
Hugs.